dispatched back in 96, 1994. It's so long ago. And Trudy, my wife, is also ex-Army. We both served 6 years back in the 80s and 90s, and since I've moved on. So I've been basically in the oil industry since I've left the defence, and now am the head of training and compliance for Caltex Australia. I'm also, of course, an ambassador for Soldier On. So I'm pretty passionate about helping ex-defence where I can sort of make it into, the civilian working force. So I thought today we'll go through, can I just ask for both Patrick and Glenn, are you both in or ex serving?
I'm still serving.
Still serving. Army, Air Force, Navy?
Air Force, 35 years.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yep. And Patrick, ex-Army. Excellent. All right. So what I'll do is I'll share my screen with you guys. Yeah. So some things that we'll cover is what you can do with your skills, some application tips, transferable skills. We'll just talk briefly about recognised prior learning and how Soldier On can actually help you with that. Civilianising your CV, some interview tips, skills, behaviour and culture that's developed from serving in the military. And then we'll have a quick overview, and then we can have a group discussion and questions at the end. But if you do have any questions as you go, please let me know. Even if you can't, Patrick, if you can't speak, just through Messenger, and David, if you let me know, because sort of my screen's blocked out and all I can see is actually the PowerPoint. So if you let me know, that would be great.
Yeah, no problem.
So what can you actually do with your skills? So to give you an insight, just within Caltex alone, and I'll share this PowerPoint with you. I'll get Dave to email it to you guys after this presentation. And so you can have a read through it and you can sort of soak it in. Then if you have any questions later down the track, please contact Dave, who can give you my details. I'm happy to follow up and sort of help out where I can. But just to give you an idea, I just chose 4 people from Caltex alone who are all ex-defence. There's myself, who is now the training and compliance team lead for Caltex. Di Hockaday is our group security and resilience manager at Caltex. He's ex-British Special Forces. Damien Plumley, operations superintendent at our refinery in Brisbane, at Lytton in Brisbane. He's also British ex-Special Forces. And Paul Baker is now he's no longer the operations coordinator. He's actually the Newcastle terminal manager in Newcastle, and he's ex-Air Force. So, and there is quite a few more. So there's some different roles that come out of your defence crew. So I was actually a driver from One Transport Squadron. I know Paul Baker was a refueler with the RAF. And of course, the other 2 guys were Special Forces. So, there's some varied roles that you can get into. Just because I was, for me, in my instance, I was a driver. I did driving for about a year when I first left the defence and haven't done it since. I've been, like I said, with the oil industry for 28 odd years now. So just because what you're doing now doesn't necessarily mean what you do in the future. Another tip is, particularly now with the heavy restrictions with COVID-19 and stuff like that, is when you actually start looking for work, have a think about what sort of industry you want to get into, and then start having a look for some big companies within that industry. For example, Caltex is in the oil industry. We actually have our own careers page. So you've got your normal SEEK and job finding tools, but what a lot of companies do is they have their own. So we have our own careers page, you know, BHP have their own careers page. A lot of them have their own careers page. The government also has their own careers page. So it's worth, if you know sort of what field you want to get into, is going to a few of those big company pages and actually creating a profile on there, very much like you would with a recruiting thing like Seek, and you just go through. So for us, like you can see on screen, we have our own careers page. You can create your profile and you can actually, you know, refine that. So if you're only looking for jobs in New South Wales, you can specify New South Wales, etc. So, and most big private companies, and including government jobs, do have these now. So, so it's definitely worth having a look at that. The other one, if you notice back on the previous slide where there were the four of us, you would have you'd see down the bottom LinkedIn. A lot of jobs now search through LinkedIn for potential candidates as well. So it's definitely worth, if you haven't got a LinkedIn profile, is getting a LinkedIn profile, and Soldier On can definitely help with that. So Sarah would be able to help you set up a LinkedIn profile. Caltex uses LinkedIn profile to sort of scan candidates when they first apply. So some application tips. So the job advert that you actually see will generally be very specific about the types of skills and experience that the company is looking for. So for us, of course, if we're looking for a driver, right, it will be, we'll put a lot of detail in there about what we actually want. The job description will look for more detail, right? So, and it also may indicate sort of goals and expectations, what they expect from you. A key thing is to research the company. So if you actually go into their website, so if you went into like our website, for example, Caltex, you'll find our values and what you can actually look at there is what sort of, you can almost read what type of culture that company has, right? Because you've got to think about, is the company actually right for you as well? So read into the company, research the company before you start applying for the roles, and then read between the lines. So often when a company will put a job advert up, it will contain keywords, and it's about identifying those keywords. Like, I'm not sure if you can see it there, but there's words like leadership, accountability, collaboration. So these are the type of things that you're looking for, and they're the things that you need to sell. So when and if you make it to an interview, that's the type of things that you want to be able to sell. So reading between the lines, doing some research on the company, knowing what they want to look, what they're actually looking for, you can then tailor your CV and your pre-application letter and also your interview around what they're looking for. And that's really important. It's really important. It's very hard these days to have just a generic CV. You can build a generic CV, but for each job, you need to generally tailor it to suit those jobs. So that's really important. Top tips, civilianize your CV. I've seen so many CVs through Pathways events. I always get the candidates to bring along their CVs and so I can have a look at them. And you'll see so much military acronyms in there, right? And number one, in your CV, you shouldn't have any acronyms, but often we do, and often we use the military terminology. We've got to try and think about how you can turn that military terminology into civilian terminology. What's the civilian equivalent? So what I've got here is it's a little list, and I can also send Dave. I've got just a PDF basically of this, so it's a separate spreadsheet, so you can take it home, you can print it out, and it runs you through, I suppose, an instruction on how you can identify your transferable skills. So that's your military-based skills into civilian terms, into civilian terminology, right? Because you can say that you worked for a commanding general or anyone, you know, of any significant rank to a civilian manager. They won't have a clue what you're talking about, you know. For them, that has no reference at all. So it's about identifying your skills and transferring them to what civilians understand. It's okay if you go to a workforce that might have an ex-military manager, but if it hasn't, which is most often the case, you know, they'll have no idea what they're looking at. And I can guarantee you your CV will be filed in the round file beside his desk. You know, it won't go any further. So what I've done here, and I won't go through it in detail, I'll let you, I will send out this to you so you can actually go through it step by step. But it's really quite a simple way of identifying your transferable skills. And there's actually some good things on the Defence website as well now about transferring transferable skills. It's another thing that Soldier can also help you with. So the pathways events are really key in helping identify what you need. So when you get to a pathways event and you get to start to talk to potential employers, you know, you really need to listen what they're looking for and ask them. If you take your CV in with you and ask someone to have a look, you know. But in the meantime, it's definitely worth getting your CV to Sarah or the Soldier On team and getting them to have a bit of a look. Recognised prior learning these days is massive. And you guys, whether you're serving or ex-serving, it's, you know, you guys get it in bucket loads. So unfortunately, when we discharged, recognised prior learning wasn't around. These days, recognised prior learning is massive. So Sarah will be able to help you with your recognised prior learning as well. Once you've actually identified all of your skills using the checklist, which I'll get Dave to send you, Soldier On can actually then go through and start looking at what you've what skill set you've developed within the military, and then convert that to civilian learnings. So I'm just trying to think of one off the top of my head, something that there's plenty of stuff that translates. I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but there is a lot of stuff that actually translates these days into certificates, TAFE courses, you know, qualifications, civilian qualifications. So I can't think what it's called, but you guys can, when you discharge, you can request a like a learning. There's a terminology for it, but it's a learning. It shows all the things that you've achieved in the military, or like a training record or register of all your learnings, and that's what Sarah can then use to transfer into your civilian RPL, so your recognised prior learnings.
Sorry, Brad, can I just jump in there quickly?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, it's your PM Keys record, your service record. So that lists all the units that you've got that you gained from defence. and you will look at it, and there'll be so many of them there, and there's just a huge list, and you think, yep, what does that mean? But pretty much what we can do is we can get it assessed by one of our RTOs that we use, and it'll come back with lots of different qualifications that are recognised in the civilian employment world. So a lot of the time it'll come back with advanced diplomas. For examples, I'm thinking work health safety, project management, that sort of thing. But the list is pretty endless. So yeah, definitely worthwhile getting done. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a really big advantage to have that, because then you've already got a whole heap of stuff on your CV that is recognisable, right? And it's one of our, as military or ex-military, we so undersell ourselves and we think, oh, all I've done is this in the military, whereas we haven't. You've done actually a lot more than a lot of people that get pigeonholed into a job in civilian life, right? Where they just focus on one thing. Whereas in the military, you do so many different things that all potentially do go to those diplomas or advanced diplomas and stuff like what Dave said. So it's really it's probably one of the early steps you want to get done, through Soldier On.
Patrick, who's already discharged, is he able to?
Dave, Trude was just saying, for is that still available to people like Patrick that have already discharged?
If you can get hold of your PM Keys record, yep. I've seen in the past though, people have had issues getting the PM Keys record. So but if you can get it, then definitely, sort of thing. Even just copies of your service record that you might have, any records of achievement, that sort of thing from defence. We can use all of that, and we can get it all assessed. So
Yeah, excellent. So a good versus a bad CV, right? So this it really does make a difference. What I might show you first is the bad CV. I'm terrible with technology, so just bear with me for 1 second. So can everyone see that? Yeah, okay, that's a bit better. So if you read what you don't want a CV to do is tell a story, right? You want it to be brief and to the point and sell yourself, okay? So, and it's got to be accurate. So, spelling, grammar, all of that type of stuff has to be really spot on. So if you look at this one, for example, here, his employment, right? So from July 2018 to current, if you actually look at that, it tells a story, right? It actually reads like he's telling a story. In July, I was promoted to FSQAOIC and was in place in charge of the value add room and the cold stores, as well as helping the others to OICs with kill floors and bone rooms. In this role, I've undone. So he actually tells a story there, right? There's a lot of spelling mistakes. There's a lot of grammar. I mean, even if you look down here where it's got, how does this read? I've conducted interviews and been part of the hiring process, selecting a team and then training, supporting and leading my inexperienced team. When you read that back to yourself, right, it's got to be accurate and to the point. And as I've said here, acronyms, right? Do I know what an OIC is? Do I know, I mean, I can see there that it's Food Safety Quality Assurance Officer in charge, but we've really got to keep acronyms to a minimum. After 5 months as a SASTEC operator, right? More storytelling. Okay. So his time in the Navy, right, which was from February 2008 to February 2012, basically that's all he put there. Like, he's been at the meat works, right, for 1 year, and he's done all of that. His time in the Navy, he's done what, 8 lines, right? And it's the Navy that he should be selling himself to, because he's trying to get out of the meat industry, right? So, you know, you've really got to sell yourself. There was nothing in there about all of his the skills that he really picked up while he was in the Navy. So, you know, this is an example, right, of, and even just simple things like formatting there. So the big gap, you know, the big space. So that's an example of not a great CV. This one here, right, is a bit more of an example of a good CV. So very simple at the top. There's all your contacts. There's my name. This is what I'm interested in, right? Project management, safety, leadership, strategy. Manages projects, implements strategic initiatives, leads motivated teams. There's a little bit of background, okay? Managed, and this is all while he's in the Navy. So he's actually transferred his skills from the Navy into this CV really, really well. And you'll have a copy of these. Make sure I send you a copy of these 2 CVs so you can have a look as well. I've had permission from both. The bad CV, I've changed all names and everything else like this. Richard is actually, this is a actual CV of Richard's, and he's happy for people to go through it, share it, etc. So you can see the difference here, right? Community contribution. Community contribution, right, is actually, believe it or not, a really key part of a CV these days. Businesses want to know that you're more than just a, you know, they want to know that you're a family man. They want to know that you're actively involved in the cricket club. They want to know that you're actively involved in the community. Because it shows them that, you know, you're not just for you. You're a team player. You're a bigger person. So community contribution, regardless of how small, is actually really key these days. A lot of businesses are actually looking at that.
I mean, even if you coach the footy team or the netball team, you do your first aid for your kids' sporting team. That's the sort of stuff that you would put in there.
Yeah, all of that type of stuff you need to put in there, right? And then your employment history. And if you actually read through this, look, here's a perfect example, right? Project management. Planned, scheduled, successfully completed multiple submarine maintenance periods, typical budget of $1 million per day, oversaw multi-agency team of defence contractors and staff. So he's sort of broken it down into civilian terms. Risk management, safety case production. We have that in our everyday business. Change management or management of change. We all have that in our business. Investigation, you know, all of that type of stuff. So it's been really civilianized. It's really a nice, easy CV to read, you know. Not many, also you'll notice there's not very many acronyms as you go through. He's actually used the full wording for pretty well everything. So yeah, so there's an example of a good CV. And like I said before, Soldier On will actually help you put your CV together as well. Yeah, so now, believe it or not, the bad CV was actually put together, right, by someone who told him that he'd you know, put CVs together before. It's also the same as I've seen plenty of CVs which were okay CVs, but they were still very militarized, because what they've done is they've gone to somebody who basically just put in their words, but put it into that format, into a CV format. And they didn't actually demilitarize it. They didn't civilianize it. So be careful about paying somebody as well, because what they could do is just take your words and put it into that CV, right? Because they won't know either. They won't know the military terminology or the civilian equivalent of the military terminology. So it is important to to get the right people, and Soldier On can help you with that. I think in here a little bit later on, there's some tips from Richard, whose CV that was, and there is a contact in there as well for someone, the person that actually put his CV together. So some interview tips. Number one, research the company, right? Research the company, because potentially if you get to an interview stage, they are going to ask you some questions like, so what drew you to this company? Why do you want to work for Caltex? Okay, prepare to sell yourself. It's the number one thing as Australians, or just human beings, we don't do well, right? We don't do well selling yourself. But you've really got to, in an interview, it's important to sell yourself. So as I've said there, go in with 3 to 5 selling points in mind, right? What will make you the best candidate for that position? Have that in mind already. And don't feel bad about taking notes into an interview, okay? You can take in some notes. That no one will ever look down on you for taking notes into an interview. Prepare practice answers, right? So actually think of some questions that they'll potentially ask, and then practice those answers. Actually practice the answers. Get your partner, get a friend, whatever, to go through and ask you some questions, and actually practice. So there is a model there which I've put, which is the STAR model. So situation, task, action, and result. That's typically how people will ask. They'll say, so can you tell us about a situation where you had conflict, right? So you can actually think about that by using the STAR model. So what was the situation? What were you doing at the time? What action did you take? And what was the result? Because that's what they're looking for when they ask those questions, right? So that will show that you did that problem solving, right? So they just don't want you to say, oh, I separated the two guys and then left it at that, right? Think about what was the situation, what was the task, what action did you take, and then what was the result? And then think outside the box as well. Think outside the box. Think about situations, even outside of work, in sport. It doesn't have to be work related. Don't put everything into a box. You've got to, if there's something that you've done that's fairly significant outside of work, use that, right? If they want more info, they'll ask for more info. Or if they want it to be a work-related one, they'll then say, have you got something related to work, right? But go in with your best answers. And then prepare questions to ask, okay? I can tell you now, as someone that hires somebody, and I actually spoke to our HR head of recruiting, and they basically said when they do their online phone interview, one of the ways they shortlist people is if they don't ask any questions, right, they'll potentially put you into the side pile just because you didn't have any questions. It's really that simple and that brutal. You've got to remember these days a lot of people apply for jobs. There's a lot of work. Good work doesn't come up often, so a lot of people apply for good jobs, and so they get fussy, right? So examples there on the screen. If I'm hired, what are the 3 most important things that you want me to accomplish during my first 6 months, right? What are the biggest challenges? All of those type of things you've got to think about. Do not be afraid to ask about money in the first interview, right? That's another big one that people tend to avoid, is because you'll often find that that money won't be mentioned in a advert these days. So don't be afraid if it hasn't been advertised. Can you give me a ballpark figure about what the salary is, or what the package is? What's included in the package. Skills, behaviour and culture is something that's really that we ex-military or military forget about, right? And this is skills, behaviour and culture that is embedded in you from the time you do your basic training till the time you discharge. It's the stuff that you don't even think about, that you do on a daily basis. The communication, the teamwork, right? How you lead and manage teams. Even as a digger, at times you're still put in charge of, a section or a group of men or women, and expected to lead and manage, right? More often than not, you deliver training and do assessments. Monitor morale and the health of a team, right? Adaptability and flexibility. Individual presentation, the way that you present yourself, punctuality, time management. These are all things that are embedded in you through your time in the military. I mean, my wife and I still to this day embarrassed, or the kids are all now not home, but right up until this day, we'd embarrass the kids. If the party started at 7 o'clock, we'd be there at 5 to 7. They'd say, Dad, Mum and Dad, no, 7 means 7:30. Well, I'm sorry, no, it doesn't. To us, it means 5 to 7. So, and it's still embedded in us to this day. So all of those things are ways of selling yourself. You've got to think about on your CV, how can you put all of those, the embedded culture into your CV? And also, if you make it to an interview, think about that as well. Don't let that go. Don't lose your punctuality. Don't lose your time management. Don't lose your individual presentation. Don't rock up to the interview, right, in just a jeans and a t-shirt, right? Put on the nice pants, put on a shirt or a polo shirt, be presentable.
You can never be overdressed.
Yeah,
you can be underdressed.
You can definitely be underdressed for an interview. As Trude just said, you can never be overdressed. This overview, I won't go through it in detail because I want to be able to have some questions at the end. This was actually given to me by Richard when I did one of these in Melbourne a couple of months ago. The key here is, as the heading says, understand your value, right? Understand your value. So, as it says, the military offers the opportunity to gain significant professional responsibility, authority, and experience from a young age. So don't underestimate what you can do. And if you actually have a read through the next couple of pages, it really highlights the skills and the responsibilities, that we as military were given, and often from a very young age, right? I think of the stuff that I did as a 17, 18, 19, 20-year-old, and I think of my 21-year-old son now as to whether I'd have the faith in him to be doing some of the stuff that we were doing when we were in the military. We were trained to do it, so you have that, that expectation is there. The last paragraph here is important. At the interview stage, remember, it is a two-way process. They are assessing your suitability to the organisation, and you are assessing the suitability of the organisation to yourself. Occasionally, the situation arises that you need to take that role, but if you can be objective, then assess their suitability to you. So I know for a fact that Richard, at one point, he was fortunate. He did have a couple of jobs on sort of on the table at one time, but he actually ended an interview because he felt that that company was not morally right for him, right? So don't be, if it's not right for you, it's just not right for you. But sometimes you've got to do, you know, what you've got to do because you need to at the time, right? Invest in yourself. So don't be afraid once you discharge, right, to actually spend, if you can, a little bit of money on getting that diploma or getting that degree. As someone that employs somebody, right, I can tell you now that these days, most private business do not care if you've got a diploma or a degree, but as long as you have the bit of paper, right? So if the option is to do a 4-year degree versus doing a 6-week certificate, start with the certificate, right? And then, you know, see how you go. Because often all they want is that bit of paper to say that you can actually physically do that job. As it says on the page there, LinkedIn, right? The military actively use Facebook, Instagram to describe their lives, but rarely market themselves on LinkedIn. Use LinkedIn to develop your professional network. So, as it says there, avoid reaching out those directly in your unit or friends to establish yourself. This is on LinkedIn, okay? But actively seek connections outside of these networks and reach out, because otherwise you end up with a very closed network of basically just friends. It's not, LinkedIn is not Facebook. It is a networking tool to potentially find employment, right? So it's important to reach out. So you can do a search on there for, you know, oil industry, for OH&S, for project management, for all of that type of stuff. And do not be afraid to actually reach out to somebody and say, hey, I'd like to link with you. And it's always good to add a little note. Hey, I'd like to link with you as, you know, I do similar work in the military, but I'm discharging or looking at discharging and gaining civilian employment. And I have no doubt that they will accept your invitation. And, you know, that's one more person. So then you get contact to all of their contacts. So it's important to establish a working relationship within the network so that your network will grow. And it just exposes you to potentially more jobs in the future. The transition cell for those that are still in the military, the transition cell, which wasn't around when we were around, but it now offers a lot of advice and guidance. So use it, use them, okay? The transition cell help sheet isn't really, I've got it, I've read through it. It is okay, but it won't be enough. You know, you're going to have to do some work to market yourself and sell yourself. Like he says there as well, seek out a mentor, right? An external mentor. And that could be someone like me. So I actually mentored Richard. Soldier On connected us. And I sort of, you know, any questions, any guidance, it's always, it's invaluable, right? To have someone that you can pick up the phone or send them a text message to and say, hey, I'm thinking about this, or can you have a look over this, right? Someone that's been there and someone that is now actively working in either the corporate world or the civilian world where you want to go, right? It's there, right? So the last line there, it says, or the last couple of lines, particularly noteworthy that my resume was translated into city speak. It cost approximately $300, right? And that included setting up his LinkedIn profile, and the contact details are there on the page. So, you know, if you want to go through that way, you can go through that way. But people like David and Sarah, are more than capable of and putting you in touch with the right people, if not helping you themselves, to get that set up also, okay? So you can really lean on Soldier On. Soldier On are great for helping us do that, okay? The boundaries, so he's just put here, the ADF has clearly defined boundaries. Industry, unless highly regulated, does not have those boundaries, right? So understanding your own value will allow you to move between the boundaries of your new employer to get them what they want. Maintain the structure and discipline as you will stand out. So that's going back to what we said before earlier about your presentation, all of that type of stuff, right? Generally, if you're ex-military, you very quickly pick up on, I think that guy or that girl is ex-military, or definitely ex-forces, or it might have been ex-fire brigade, or currently fire brigade, or ex-police. You know, your radar gets switched on very quickly, and particularly once you start talking to someone, you know, usually within 3 or 4 minutes, you can definitely say he was ex-army, ex-navy, ex-air force. You know, because we do tend to maintain that structure and the discipline that was embedded into us through the military. That last line that he's got there is really important, but be flexible with your new employer, as they may not know how to deal with you, okay? If you go into an interview and talk like a soldier, right, move like a soldier, they may get nervous that you're a sheep, and they may want a shepherd, if you understand what I mean. They may not want someone that's just going to follow every order. They want someone that's going to think for themselves as well. So when you set up your CV and you get the opportunity to have an interview, it's maintaining all of the good things, right? The structure and the discipline, but also being flexible and showing that you can be the shepherd, right? And that you can think for yourself. It's really, that part of it is really, really important. So I've basically given you a whole heap of information. Like I said, I will share this with Dave, and I'll also send him the PDF on the identifying on, I've had a mental blank. No, on the, you know, your skills, transferable skills. I'll send you that PDF, and I'll also send you the resumes, the good and the bad, so that you can sort of have a look at them. You might be able to pull some bits out that you like and some of the wording, and use it for yourself, you know, to your advantage. So really, yeah, that's it for me as far as the presentation. I'll stop sharing my screen now. Yeah, so if anyone has sort of any questions, or Dave, if you want to add anything else onto that before we go on to questions, that'd be great.
I just want to obviously say thanks to Brad for sharing everything there. Just cover the points, especially around the resumes. As Brad's mentioned, I've seen so many resumes that have been done previously that have been very generic. They don't stand out, and it's one of my pet hates. I see that, you know, the same template being used by organisations, and it just doesn't make you stand out to an employer. So every time you're applying for a job, you always got to tailor it. And it's just, you know, a lot of the key skills people put in, saying they work as part of a team, you know, they're flexible. We all are at the end of the day. So at the end of the day, it's you know, what's going to make you stand out. So it's really, I know it's hard. We're selling ourselves. I mean, I've been doing this sort of work for 15 years, and even if I was doing a resume for myself now, I know I'd struggle to sell myself. It is difficult, but yeah, that's why we're here to help. So I mean, my team, my community team, really strong on the resume side. So obviously we can give any assistance with that. So yeah. Okay. Has anybody any questions for Brad, or quiet?
No, that's all good. Even if you come up with some questions later on, so once you get the information, thanks, Patrick. Once you get the information a bit later, you know, and if you want to go, and once you've gone through it, if you do have any questions, please reach out to Dave or Sarah. And yeah, I'm happy for them to pass on my details if you had any questions for me directly, or you can ask them through Dave or Sarah. I just really want to thank you for your time, and you know, I wish you all the best in whichever pathway or journey you want to take. You know, so thank you.
Yeah, I'd just like to say from soldier on point as well. Yeah, thanks for attending this evening. We hope that you know you've got some really good information from this. Yep, and yeah, thanks again, Brad. Yeah, really appreciate the presentation you've done this evening. So, yep, yeah, but I'll send the presentations out anyway to everyone. So, yeah, no problem. Okay, just one last check. Okay, so yep, I'll be in touch with everyone over the next day or so with the presentations. And if you've got any questions in the meantime, you can send them through to Sarah. I've got access to Sarah's inbox at the moment, so yeah, I can look after that for the meantime. So, okay.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay.
No problems. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay. See you.